Hi, everyone. It's Tara from the Dirty Words of Wisdom. And today we're going to have our premiere episode, the first dirty word, which is God. I am the owner of the Light Compass, and I am coaching people back to their internal love and light within. Andy?
And I'm Andy Spiros of Intuitive Business Guides, and I help successful entrepreneurs move through their inner obstacles so they can experience greater wealth, success, and well-being. So here's how it's going to go. We're going to rate the word, Tara and I, and then we're going to talk about why it's so dirty to us, and then we're going to clean it up. Woo! So Tara, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Cue the music. I'm ready to rate.
Do, do, do.
All right.
Okay. Ready? Oh my gosh, it's a 7 for me too.
Yeah, why does mine look backwards?
I know, mine does too. Next time we'll draw it the other way. Just made a damn 8. It would have looked
mirror image. So yes, everything will be an 8 from now on. So I have a 7, and that surprised me, and it was surprising that you had the same thing. But that actually surprised me at how dirty that word was, because I consider myself someone to have cleaned up that word.
Yes.
So I guess what happened for me when God was a super dirty word. I mean, I think it was just off the charts when I was younger. I grew up in a religious household that was this concept of God as this being that was going to proclaim, you're bad, you're bad, you're going to get punished. And I was kind of always waiting for something to punish me if I did even the slightest wrong. Like, my conscience was super strong. And so I grew up with this fearful image of God. At the same time, I had this inner knowing that wasn't really God. So the word became synonymous with that punitive way of image of it, representation of it. And so I didn't use it for many years. And I really would bristle when anybody used it. And then, I don't know, I guess when I had children, I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I found a way to make my peace with it. I thought I had really cleaned it up, and I thought that when I use it, I'm totally good with it. But recently what happened was, and this is probably why it's a 7, is I've been coming in contact with a lot of people who introduce themselves first and foremost as like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm here to do God's work in the world. And for me,
like, oh, no. I gotta go.
I want to run. I gotta go. I gotta go.
I don't want to keep you from that, so I'm gonna.
That's right. It seems like it really left. It feels for me. That's when like we talked about in our Going Deeper episode. Yeah. That is one time where the alarm bell goes off, the armor comes up, and I'm literally, barricading myself.
Locked in.
So blocking them in. And I really can't hear them. And there've been a lot of people really recently coming up, and I think that's why it's a 7 for me right now. What about you, Tara?
Yeah, and it's a timely time to talk about it, because I think the universe does that synchronicity, right? It brings you exactly those moments or those encounters to remind you. So yeah, similar to you, I grew up in a religious family. It was Lutheran, so the Christian faith. And I always pictured God, or was taught that God is sort of like this man in a flowing robe that is judging me. And so when I hear that word, I hear a lot of judgment, and that's what keeps me back a little bit from it. And I also hear, like, if someone were to say to me, because I hear the similar thing, like, I'm here to do God's work, like, oh great, they want to, like, it's almost like cultish, like they want to pull me into their religion and they want me to believe what they believe. So I too armor up and think, no way in hell, like, I'm not gonna go sing your song of praise God. I mean, and I'm a very spiritual person, so it's and I've actually learned to use the universe instead of God, because to me, the universe is supportive and magical and full of synchronicities and power. And that includes for me, God, meaning like one source, love, all those things. And so, that's kind of how I have to reframe it in my mind to be okay with it. And then, kind of step back and let them still have their truth about what God means to them.
True. And I never feel like what's interesting, two things that are really interesting about what you're sharing is, first of all, if you haven't listened to our Going Deeper, we talk about our way of cleaning up words, which is CAR. So C is compassion, A is for awareness, R is for reframe. And what Tara just described was she was, using R for reframe and using different words. And I do that as well. I use universe or love or source or something like that. And I want to be more, what's interesting too is that you're talking about, you're compassionate to another person having their own truth. And I'm that way too. Like when that made me bristle, I did not need to change that person. Like I didn't care that it's good for them. If it's working for them, it's totally working. I support everybody in whatever works for them.
Yes.
So, and rather, what I would want to do is I would want to not armor up. I would want that word to be a trigger. So it's a door opener for me to go, oh, what's going on? What's the meaning for me? You said the meaning for you was judgment. And I feel a little bit of that in judgment too. And you were also saying that it's like they want you to be this, they're going to recruit you and you're going to have to do things their way. And I also have that story running where it's like, oh my God, like just don't sell me on anything because I'm really not buying today. Like I'm full. I got enough groceries. I don't need solar, whatever you're selling. Right. I don't need it. It almost has this story of that there's going to push something on me, and the other thing that came up with someone I was working with was they said, it was very insightful. They said, I feel like some people who use the word God, my story is that they've used it as an excuse for bad behavior or for limiting ways of viewing the world. Oh, so God can be dirty for that reason. Like, well, if it's God's, it's
God's will or something.
God's will, that if this happened, or God doesn't want people who are gay to be married.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's not my view personally. Yeah. That's not my view. I think that's the example that she used. She's like, I don't believe that's God's will, and I think it's a cop out to use God as that reason. That's why it made her bristle.
So it sounds like people are almost like putting the accountability on God and not on themselves. Like this, because I hear in that statement, if that was true for her, then someone's saying like it's not God's will, but they also believe it, but they don't want to take the accountability for their own beliefs. So they frame it in a way that's like, well, what the Bible said, or that's
right. It's what God said. Yes, and I think that's a really accurate way of putting it. Like they don't want to take personal responsibility. Like it's just it's a download. Like, well, God said this, so I really have no choice in the matter. And I think that's what makes people bristle. Is that it's what made her bristle. I think is, and it makes me, frankly, it makes me bristle as well when people don't take personal responsibility. And the other piece, and I think you and I were talking about this, that the word God makes you uncomfortable because it's often an excuse for people not to take action related to that whole God's will part, right? Like, well, if it's God's, right, the power piece. Like, well, if it's God's will, if God doesn't want me to have that car or that house or that job, then he won't. Right. And I kind of feel that way too. I mean, I think there's certain things, I think everything's out of our control personally. It's not that much in our control, but except for the next step or what's right around us. Yeah. And I agree that when people say that, it does make me bristle when they're not taking action.
Yeah. So I have a similar view. The only thing is I do think that we choose. I think that we co-create with the universe or God, so that we can't know like in 10 steps what's going to happen, but we can know in the next step what's going to happen because we're choosing that, right?
Yeah, and I'm right there with you.
What you just said is, okay. So then we're on the same page. So but what I don't like about like, oh, God doesn't want me to have that job or God doesn't want me to do that. It's like, that's a story you're telling yourself. God is in you. He's not somewhere out there. Like turning that, like the next chapter of your book is like, nope, you're not going to have that job. Like you are choosing that. And then I think
Right.
what comes up for me when people say stuff like that is, what are you afraid of? Like, are you, because it may be, let's say someone in that job example really wanted this job and then they didn't get it. Then they just said, well, it wasn't God's will. Well, to me, that means you're not addressing the pain of feeling that. And that is an alarm clock for me that you need to get into that and sort of be with it to get through it, instead of giving your power to something external outside of you.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And I think that's a really good point, is that there's, we've talked about this before, where there's ways that we each avoid things in our life. And I think, like, we use words as a key to go, oh, this is our alarm clock. Like, one of the things we use is words. And the whole God word opens up the door to God's will and people avoiding the pain and disappointment and feeling through that. And that's part of what life is. And those are the lessons, and those are the growth opportunities that everybody has access to.
Yeah.
And I think if I don't listen to that, I know if I don't listen to that, it'll come up in a bigger way for me.
Yes. Yeah. First it's subtle, then it's like knock you over the head with the like reality, right? Or
exactly.
If you're paying attention. If you're not paying attention, maybe you might do.
Any other ways God is dirty for you?
Yeah, I think those are kind of, I guess when I think about it too, Andy, for me, I don't know how to resolve it in my head. Like, I don't know how. So I know God is not this man on a white robe that's like taking notes of every time I do something wrong and judging me. I also don't think that
he's standing right behind you.
I don't think God is a he. I don't think it's a she. I think it's this, I think it's an energy. And so my view of God is a little bit more expansive. So if I were hard pressed to like explain God to someone, like let's say my son, I would say it's everything. And it's not complete, because it's a living, I don't even know what to call it, energy. And so
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have had to explain it to my children, interestingly enough. And so I've had to put some language around it. And I think of it as the Force from Star Wars. So when they talk about the Force that runs through everything and is part of everything. And I just say that's a God energy, right?
Yes.
It's what's within us, and it permeates everything. That's how I think about it.
I love
so
it.
Like, as a consequence in our household, very expansive. And I love the addition, which I never thought about. It's a living, expansive thing. Yes. And you know what's interesting too, because I'm kind of a nerdy science geek in addition to many other things. And science has shown that the universe is expanding. Like, it started from energy. They discovered this particle, which is, cool to me because I'm into that stuff, that actually created matter from nothing, and that the universe is continually expanding. Right. So that, I don't need scientific proof, but that to me is like, oh yeah, so that is the energy that's constantly flowing through us. So that's how I explain God to myself. And actually, when I speak about God in that way, the word is totally not dirty.
Right. Exactly.
And the only other place that God is not dirty is in the bedroom. So, or as an exclamation, the other places that God is not dirty, like as an exclamation, like, oh my God, OMG. And when I talk about God in that way, where I think about it as a force that's running through everything.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I've recently, as I've been thinking about preparing for this podcast, have come to really allow to settle into me is that whole piece about it. The universe isn't just like here static, like this is how it's always going to be. Like, every action we take as a human being or beings on other dimensions is expanding and expanding and expanding. And one of the things that I think about is we're all God's in us. So he's having the experience that we are having because the energy God wants, wants to expand and feel that and know that and experience that. Right. So when I think about it that way, it's just super exciting to me because it's co-creative, and it's not duality. It's not right and wrong. So it's not like, oop, 10 commandments, you broke one of them, and you just took my name in vain.
I totally do.
Like,
yeah, and, you know, it's totally tapping into that whole, it feels very expansive when you talk about it. And I think transposing, like taking a dropper full of that and putting it into like every conversation where someone says, you know, God,
dropper full.
It really feels, like a dropper full. I'm so big on drop. Like if I can do it with a dropper, like do a dropper full. I don't want to be carrying bucket loads of stuff, except for good stuff, right? All the stuff I want, the wanted stuff. I want buckets full of that. But like just a dropper full of that in to realize like that's, I can almost change the meaning of it as it comes. So we were talking about like in our car, compassion, awareness, and reframe. So
yes,
the meaning, right? So changing the meaning of it as it's coming to me. Like I'm aware that that's a charged word. I'm also aware that that person has their own meaning that's great for them, and I can receive it in that other way, and I can have compassion for myself that it's it's a little charged. And what's interesting for me is right now, I'm not at a 7 anymore.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. So what are you at? Let's hold fingers.
Well, having this conversation, I would say I'm at like a 2 now.
Oh, I'm at a 4.
So both we weren't
so
like
even just talking about it. So maybe we'll have to make it. Maybe our acronym will have to be CART: compassion, awareness, reframe, and talking. Talking about it with a like-minded.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, and I think what I really love about that conversation is, so we talked at the beginning about holding the truth and knowing our truth, and then just allowing space for their truth to emerge as well. Because if someone's saying I'm doing God's work, we can, in my mind, I can reframe. I can have compassion because I think that's really noble that you're basically spreading love and joy to the world. And then an awareness of, that still maybe has a charge for me, or it doesn't. Or if they are trying to convert me to believe what they believe, I can stand in my power and say, graciously, that's not my truth, and I honor yours, and thank you for sharing. It doesn't have to be this combative thing, or, I have to fight now because they don't believe what I believe. Or I have to convince them.
You can receive their message. You're in a place of power, a place of possibility, where you can honor and receive them, and they can honor and receive you. And there's no push-pull, which is really a great place to be.
Right.
And the other thing, I have this great awareness right now that we're both doing God's work in our own way, because I think like I'm God, and God is in me, God is in you. And so like what we're doing right now, which is exciting to us and fun to us, and the work that we do in our businesses, by the transitive property of God, like we are doing God's work too. We just don't talk about it that way. We just, I just say I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or I'm having fun doing this, or I'm guided by a lot of different things.
Right.
I think it's great to have that new awareness as well.
Yeah, I do too. It's awesome.
So should we wrap it up as much as we can?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So we talked about God today. We talked about why it was dirty. It was a 7 for both of us. We talked about why it was dirty for both of us. And we talked about some ways to clean it up. And this is just the beginning of the conversation. Tara and I could probably go on for hours, and we have gone on for hours talking about the subject of this very word.
And we do, yes.
And we do, because it's fun for us. So join us in our Facebook community, Dirty Words of Wisdom. Share this podcast. Get dirty with us in conversation. Tell your friends.
Yes, tell your friends. And we are going to have an upcoming Zoom Hangout session that we'll post in our Facebook group, where we're actually going to have a conversation with you all about God and what came up for you. And in the spirit of continuous evolution of this podcast, we would love to be in dialogue and hear your thoughts. So we will have all that information in our Facebook group, Dirty Words of Wisdom. And if you haven't joined it, join. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Yeah, and we're going to do one more thing in the next video. We're going to do a process to clean up your internal representation of God. I did it with Tara. earlier. And so join us in the next video, and we'll see you then.
Let's clean it up. I love it.
Clean it up.